Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something today that a lot of people don't want to say out loud. Attraction ain't loud. Obsession ain't desperate. And a high-value woman, she don't have to beg, explain, or convince nobody of her worth. The truth is this, when a woman truly knows who she is, when she walks in peace with herself, she triggers something deep inside a man that he can't shake, can't ignore, and can't forget. Let me break this down for you real slow, because this right here is where most people get it twisted. High-value women do not chase attention. They don't run after validation. They don't wake up wondering who's going to notice them today. And that alone does something powerful to a man's mind. Because when a woman isn't chasing, when she isn't reaching, when she isn't trying to be seen, her presence starts pulling people toward her without her lifting a finger. See, chasing energy and attracting energy feel completely different. When a woman chases, a man feels pressure. He feels obligation. He feels like he's being cornered into wanting something. But when a woman stands still in her standards, when she moves with purpose and calm, a man feels curiosity. He starts leaning in. He starts asking questions. He starts wondering why she's not doing what everyone else is doing. And curiosity is dangerous because curiosity turns into interest, and interest turns into obsession. A high-value woman understands that attention has no value if it's given freely to everyone. She doesn't accept crumbs just to feel chosen. She doesn't respond to bare minimum effort. She doesn't overextend herself emotionally just to keep a man around. And when a man realizes that access to her has to be earned, not begged for, something inside him wakes up. Because men respect structure. Men respect rules. Men respect boundaries. And when those boundaries are clear, firm, and consistent, they don't walk away, they rise up. What really triggers a man is when he sees a woman who is comfortable being alone, not bitter, not cold, not guarded, just peaceful. That peace tells him she's not desperate, and a man can feel desperation before a word is ever spoken when he knows a woman doesn't need him to survive emotionally, financially, or mentally, but she chooses him anyway. It hits different because now he's not just filling a void, he's being selected. High-value women also don't announce their standards, they live them. They don't argue about respect. They don't beg for consistency. They don't explain why they deserve effort. They simply remove themselves from situations that don't meet their level. And when a man experiences that removal, that absence, it creates contrast. He starts replaying conversations. He starts noticing the quiet. He starts realizing what her presence brought into his life that he didn't appreciate when it was there. Attraction grows in space, not in force. A woman who pulls back instead of chasing allows a man's imagination to work against him. He starts wondering what she's doing, who she's talking to, whether he's still relevant in her world. And the moment a man starts questioning his position, his investment increases because men protect what they believe they could lose. This is why high-value women don't chase attention. They understand that what's truly valuable doesn't run, it stands firm and lets the right people come to it. Emotional self-control is one of the most underestimated powers a high-value woman can possess, and yet it is one of the strongest triggers for a man's deepest obsession. Most men grow up expecting emotional chaos in relationships. They expect arguments that spiral, reactions that explode, and feelings that are thrown like weapons. So when a man encounters a woman who feels deeply but responds calmly, who can express herself without losing control, it disrupts everything he thought he understood about connection. A high-value woman doesn't suppress her emotions, but she governs them. She doesn't react instantly just to release tension. She pauses. She processes. She chooses her words carefully. And that pause, that space between stimulus and response creates power, because a man can't predict her next move. He can't manipulate her with silence or provoke her with inconsistency. He realizes very quickly that emotional games don't work on her, and that awareness forces him to step up emotionally or step aside entirely. What truly hooks a man is when he notices that her emotional state is not controlled by his behavior. If he pulls back, she doesn't panic. If he's inconsistent, she doesn't spiral. If he tests boundaries, she doesn't explode. She simply observes, adjusts, and protects her peace. That independence of emotional regulation tells a man something critical. He is dealing with a woman who knows her worth. And when a man recognizes that he cannot control a woman through emotional leverage, his respect for her deepens. Men become obsessed with what they cannot dominate or destabilize. Emotional self-control removes a man's ability to create chaos and feel powerful through it. Instead, he's faced with a woman whose calm becomes a mirror. He starts questioning himself. He starts wondering why he feels unsettled while she remains grounded. And that inner discomfort pulls his focus toward her, because now she's not just a partner, she's a psychological challenge. A high-value woman also knows when to disengage emotionally. She doesn't argue endlessly to be understood. She doesn't chase clarity from confusion. When something feels off, she steps back instead of leaning in harder. And that withdrawal isn't punishment, it's self-respect. For a man, that shift is jarring. He expects emotional pursuit. He expects explanations. When he doesn't get them, his mind fills the silence with questions, and unanswered questions are fuel for obsession. Her emotional maturity creates safety without surrender. She can be warm without being needy, open without being vulnerable to exploitation, and that balance is rare. When a man experiences a woman who can love without losing herself, he begins to value her presence differently. He becomes more intentional, more consistent, more aware that access to her emotional world is a privilege, not a guarantee. This is why emotional self-control is magnetic. It doesn't demand attention. It commands respect. And respect is the foundation of any obsession that lasts. Mystery and independence are powerful forces when it comes to triggering a man's deepest obsession, because they activate something psychological rather than physical. A high-value woman does not reveal everything about herself all at once. She is open, but not exposed. She shares, but she doesn't overshare. And that measured access keeps a man mentally engaged long after the conversation ends. Most people rush intimacy They explain their past, their fears, their plans, their emotions in the hope of creating closeness. But closeness built too fast removes intrigue. A high-value woman understands that connection grows in layers. She allows a man to discover her over time, and each layer creates another reason for him to stay curious. When a man feels like there is always more to learn about her, his mind keeps returning to her even when she's not present. Independence is the foundation of this mystery. A woman who has her own routine, her own goals, her own world does not revolve around a man's schedule. She is available but not constantly accessible. She enjoys connection, but she doesn't pause her life waiting for it, and that sends a powerful signal her life is full. A man is not her entertainment, he is an addition. That alone shifts the dynamic from pursuit to value. Men become obsessed when they feel they are entering a woman's world, not consuming it. When he realizes she has responsibilities, passions, friendships, and ambitions that existed long before him, he instinctively respects her time more. He becomes intentional with his efforts. Because access to her is not unlimited, every interaction matters more. Scarcity increases value, and independence naturally creates scarcity without manipulation. A high-value woman also doesn't explain herself excessively. If she's unavailable, she doesn't over-justify. If she chooses differently, she doesn't seek approval. That quiet confidence unsettles a man in the best way. He begins to wonder what guides her decisions. He pays closer attention. He listens more carefully. Mystery doesn't mean secrecy, it means discernment. She decides what deserves access to her inner world. Independence also protects her from emotional dependence. She enjoys affection, but she doesn't need it to feel whole. And that balance makes a man feel both wanted and challenged. He feels appreciated, but not relied upon for identity. This creates a healthy tension. He wants to be important to her, but he knows he cannot replace her purpose. That tension keeps him engaged mentally and emotionally. When a man senses that losing her would mean losing someone irreplaceable, not because she filled a void, but because she stood complete on her own, his attachment deepens. Mystery keeps his curiosity alive. Independence keeps his respect intact. And together, they create a connection that lingers in his mind long after the moment has passed. Consistency in values is what separates a woman who is briefly desired from a woman who is never forgotten. A high-value woman does not shift who she is based on who is in front of her. Her behavior doesn't change depending on attention, mood, or opportunity. She is the same in private as she is in public, the same when things are good as when things are uncomfortable, and that consistency creates a deep sense of trust in a man's mind, even if he doesn't consciously recognize it at first. Most men have experienced unpredictability in relationships, rules that change, expectations that aren't clear, emotions that feel unstable. So when a man encounters a woman whose values are steady, it feels grounding. He knows where she stands. He knows what she will and will not tolerate. And that clarity allows him to relax emotionally while also taking her more seriously. Stability doesn't kill attraction, it strengthens it. A high-value woman's standards are not reactions, they are principles. She doesn't raise the bar one day and lower it the next based on fear of losing someone. If respect matters to her, it always matters. If honesty is required, it is required in every situation. And when a man sees that her values are non-negotiable, he adjusts his behavior accordingly. Because men rise to the level of consistency they respect, what makes this unforgettable is that she does not enforce her values through arguments or ultimatums. She enforces them through action. If something crosses her boundaries, she responds calmly and consistently. No drama, no threats, just alignment. That quiet follow-through leaves a lasting impression. A man may forget words spoken in emotion, but he never forgets behavior that is steady and self-assured. Consistency also removes confusion. A man doesn't have to guess how to treat her. He learns quickly what works and what doesn't. And that predictability creates emotional safety. But here's the key. Safety doesn't mean boredom when it's paired with self-respect. It means he knows that if he invests, his investment is not wasted. He knows the relationship is built on something solid, not shifting sand. Over time, this consistency becomes rare in his experience. He begins to compare other interactions to her presence. He notices how exhausting inconsistency feels elsewhere. He recognizes the peace that came from knowing what she stood for, and that comparison deepens attachment, because what is steady becomes valuable in a world full of emotional volatility. A high-value woman doesn't need to demand loyalty or obsession. Her consistent values create it naturally. When a man realizes that her character is dependable, her boundaries are firm, and her self-respect never wavers, she becomes a benchmark. And once a woman becomes the standard in a man's mind, she is never easily replaced. Men obsess over what they cannot control or easily access, and a high-value woman naturally triggers this without playing games or being manipulative. Control gives comfort. Predictability gives ease. But obsession is born where effort is required and outcomes are uncertain. A high-value woman does not hand herself over emotionally, mentally, or physically just because someone shows interest. She allows access in stages, and that pacing changes how a man attaches. When a man realizes he cannot rush her, pressure her, or manipulate her into availability, his focus sharpens. He becomes more intentional with his words, his actions, and his presence. Because now the interaction isn't casual, it's earned. The moment something must be earned, its value increases in the mind. This isn't about being distant, it's about being selective. And selectivity creates respect. A high-value woman doesn't respond instantly to everything. She doesn't drop her plans because someone texts. She doesn't rearrange her life to accommodate inconsistency. That lack of immediate access forces a man to slow down and think. He starts replaying conversations. He analyzes her reactions. He wonders where he stands. And once a man starts thinking, attachment is already forming. What truly deepens obsession is that her boundaries remain intact regardless of his behavior. If he pulls back, she doesn't chase. If he comes closer, she doesn't lose herself. This emotional neutrality removes his ability to control the dynamic. He cannot use attention as leverage, and he cannot use withdrawal as a tactic. Instead, he must show up consistently if he wants to stay connected.